Okay, I wanted to talk about my medication. So just as a reminder, I was told that I have schizophrenia, but I do believe this is a technology. Today is the 7th of May 2025, and this means that for the people in the future, this will make sense. But it's very likely that the people of the future won't have any kind of consciousness, so let's see how that goes. But still, what happened with the medication? So I start to hear voices. We know that these voices can be induced by technological means. This is a technology called P2K that was developed, more or less during the 60s. From afterwards, it has just become, let's say, more sophisticated. Apparently, it's simply a kind of stimulation of your auditive nerve that recreates the sound. So, yeah, as I say in other videos, technically everything that is related with your neurological as well as your nervous system can be hacked. And, well, I won't go in specific. I want to be concentrated in the medication. So, schizophrenia is a kind of illness that could have several symptoms. In my case, at the beginning, one of the first symptoms that I noticed is that I couldn't laugh. So, why I couldn't laugh? It was feeling like it was induced, but it was not just about laughing. It was about also not being able to communicate, not being able to speak, not being able to be sharp, not being able to understand social context. But this is not related with, let's say, my degree of autism, because I will technically always be able to communicate as I want or be as sophisticated as I want without having any kind of difficulty. Now, let's say right now I'm having one of the pain attacks in the head, but we'll go back to those ones later. I'm talking about the medication. So to be medicated, I have to have the symptoms of schizophrenia. And these symptoms technically also follow a kind of schizophrenia phases, in which you have the first phase in which you start to experience negative symptoms. Negative symptoms are the symptoms that are taken away. Positive symptoms are the ones that are induced as put. So are not taken away, but aggregate. So we have, let's say, voices as an extra symptom that shouldn't be there. That's positive symptom. And not being able to laugh is a negative symptom. So all this can be easily done with technology. What you will need technically, I mean, not going, let's say, to the specifics of how the technology works, because myself, I don't know how that works, but technically it's as simple as having electromagnetic waves that will have the length and frequency to stimulate the same size required of neurons. So if you could, let's say, have a discriminate attack on the neurological system, by that I mean to perfectly stimulate or attack a neuron with the precise kind of voltage and intensity that it needs to work, then it means that it has to also, the wave has to have the characteristics of the neuron itself, and that includes the length or size. And we know that thoughts usually work as a cluster. Then we have the situation that if you want to initiate a thought, whether it's a word, whether it is an image, a memory, a concept, a perception, Maybe that feeling that someone is there, or maybe the feeling that you will have felt, let's say, in any other condition, simply a cluster of dots. Then you'll need to locate specifically how that cluster of neurons work, and then highlight or stimulate those neurons. So electromagnetic waves need to be fine. And this can be done in several ways. Whether you have several beams of energy, you could use concentrate energy, or you could use what is called pole traps. And there is another kind of phenomena that will be for a specific part of the brains. But then we have some complications there, because you want to highlight a specific part of the brain. If you have, let's say, something like a laser that moves in air wherever you want, like a ball trap, you will need at least 3 points that work as emitters. Do these emitters locate in a really fine place, as let's say one of the extensions of or the connections membranes of the neurons, then you will need to have even something as small or as small as smaller than the neuron itself. So it means that you will have this synapses going, and that synapses is a connection, and that connection is to have the same kind of proportion as the wavelength and wave frequency characteristics. So this means that if the neuron is this big, you want the wave to be this big as the connection. If the frequency goes too fast, burns the neuron. So it has to go at such speed that the electrons will stimulate those electrons in order to work and, let's say, open up the channels in which the neurotransmitters work. Now, then we will have another situation, how that can happen at the same time in a cluster. Well, you will have something like a laser going everywhere as fast as it could, as a laser can do, and that can be easily done with these electromagnetic waves. This will, I mean, when you watch TV, usually the frequency is between 60 images per second. Let's say let's say digital TV. If you are in your monitor in a computer with a graphic card, you have 200 frames per second. To highlight a neuron, you need one wave to stimulate, and then several waves in which you continue stimulating the place. Technologies like 5G have 26 millions of waves per second. So you can technically apply one wave to a place in the cluster, another wave, and you will apply technically all these frequencies around the neuron itself, or the cluster of neurons that conserve the thought that you want to stimulate, in order to bring up the memory of that cluster, because the difference between every single frequency stimulating the different parts of the cluster are so fast that cannot even be perceived by the human mind. Yeah, at least I can perceive when these thoughts are generated, because it simply doesn't feel like myself. Let's say the pleasure that I enjoy when doing the synapses, when learning, is something that is absent when the synapses is, let's say, exerted by this kind of technology. Also the memories, I noticed that change as if they were kind of generated in a kind of computer, then being back because it simply doesn't look at myself. I mean, it doesn't look like the memory that I had before, but they look technically, as you will see the images in ChatGPT, and it means that my brain must be connected to several of the most well-known companies of the West of AI. Yeah. Are they all sharing the same information? I do believe. Because I can see as soon as there is a new kind of model for AI, it seems that those experiments happen in my brain. Now, we have solved the problem in which those thoughts can be bring up. So then to bring voices is technically stimulate the precise places in which certain sounds will reproduce with a certain intensity. Let's say if I just do like this, chuckle, I don't know, what is this, with my fingers, then I will create a sound wave that will enter in my right ear with more intensity than my left ear. Then this ear will have more stimulation, then the vibrations of the organelle that will be in the ear will eventually send a stronger signal than in the left brain. Then the signal will have certain strength and it will have certain, let's say, color characteristic or specific features that will also generate the sound for which you difference water falling or someone speaking. So it's technically the same thing as the technology that you will use in speakers. There is not much, let's say, to talk about that because this is a kind of well-known technology. Then thoughts of images will go again in the place that is related with your visual nerve, okay? Auditive nerve, then everything that is related, let's say, with language will go to mainly the front lobe in which the corpus callosum brings up language to then bring language together, and then pin that to your muscles around your face, etc., in order for you to explain and speak or talk about the ideas that you want to bring. So actually the speaking part is really, I haven't studied that part exactly, but I will try to do it for another video. But it should be more or less in the same way. Now, one of the things, okay, so we are talking about voices. That's one of the characteristics of schizophrenia, because that was the diagnosis that was given to me. Then voices, we know that the technology exists, it's B2K, it's another technology. I mean, you can Google it, you can check the patent online, etc. It's like technically something that has been there for a while. There are videos in which secret agents talk to themselves and they say that somehow they heard stuff for which they will take notes, or they will do or follow commands or whatever. I don't know which agencies use it, I don't know which agency doesn't use it, etc. But the technology exists. Now, we're gonna talk about not voices anymore, but images. Then schizophrenia can also generate images, but these, remember, these are the characteristics that are written in a book. This book was not written by someone who is experiencing schizophrenia and say, oh, having this thing, the other, blah, blah, blah. So also you can check the true history of schizophrenia in the past has been experienced also in really strange and different ways that doesn't happen that often today. Today, schizophrenia more or less is the same crazy person around in the street, and you don't hear, let's say, the more kind of fantastic stories of the past. Yeah. So through time, there will be a difference in the literature between what was schizophrenia in the past and in the future, or you will see a transition that it will seem weird because also we are adding information to the, let's say, the social statistical behavior. So if we have a billion of humans living, they will almost generate the same kind of statistical, let's say, actions through time, especially those in which humans are not neurologically aware. So this is like we will have technically one of the most important ones is Freudian sleeps. In the future, someone can simply take all the kind of videos that are recorded from, let's say, politicians, then take those videos in such a way that a weight, a mathematical weight of those videos will be presented, in which the length of the video will be related to the kind of, or the quantity of Freudian sleeps that they have. And you will see that there is some point in time in which people is experiencing more Freudian sleeps. Then it might regulate again. Why this happen? Because at the beginning, to generate Freudian sleeps will be easy. But to change Freudian sleeps, because one Freudian sleep will happen naturally, and to suppress that one in order to just allow the one that is generic to not another organic to happen, will require more computation power, and also will require to know what is the specific kind of cabling and neurological process that is happening. So most likely we will have a kind of history about the Freudian sleeps, in which the Freudian sleeps rate happens continuously, then there is a peak, then there is a low, and continues in the same way. And this is easy to catch up for, let's say, AG, etc. So why I'm bringing the Freudian sleeps? Because one of the schizophrenia symptoms is called word salad. So you're supposed to confuse the words because you are not able to manage the wording. For some reason, there is a disorder that mixes up your words and your thinking, your reasoning, and then what you are saying doesn't have any sense or meaning, or simply it comes to be random. I think even in people who really have schizophrenia for biological reasons, which is what I say that is not my case, it's more an induced schizophrenia by technology. In people who have schizophrenia for biological reasons, this kind of word salad, Freudian sleeps, and whatever delusions they have will be related to their unconscious. Yeah, always, because all this information comes from their brain. Most of the information that goes beam into my brain, most of the words are not coming from my unconscious, because these are words sometimes that I don't know the meaning. Some of them are words that I have forgotten. Some of them are, let's say, images, not memories, but data that has been taken from my input in social media, my Explorer history, yeah, in the web, in my search history, even things that I have say, but all the things that I have say related with what happened, let's say as delusions or perceptions, etc., are things that only appear to be created by myself after I got my first phone, which was in 2006, 2005. But let's say I was 13, and I was 14 years by then. I'm sure I was 14 years because I have my, I had my first job at that age. Then when I was 14, I was, yeah, I think I graduated as an electrician when I was 14. So yeah, I was going to school in the morning, then studying from, finish school at 1, then going back to kind of National Education Institute, yeah, a technical institute in which I will study from 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. As an electrician, and as more or less I know a few things besides doing a few semesters of electrical engineering. But I remember taking my first salary to buy a phone. Yeah, so I bought at that time was Motorola, who was winning the phone race before the Apple came out, and I remember pretty much having my Motorola at that time, and I can only remember things. Oh, sorry, I can only experience those thoughts that feel induced, especially about me or information that I generate afterwards I got my first phone. So it makes sense to me that this is a proof from my perspective, or the only reality that I'm experiencing, in which whatever is being in my mind doesn't come from myself, because it's not connected to my unconscious, my memories, and my own life experience, because I have a great memory before I was 14. So I have thoughts since I was 2 years old, 3 years old. I'm not really sure how advanced is the technology, but it feels so advanced that it technically can retrieve any single memory that you have, even those that you don't know that is still there. That's how it feels. Now, then images, you will have the visual nerve, then will kind of be storing a part of the brain, and also to retrieve images, there is another part in the corpus callosum that will, let's say, put that accessible to the frontal lobe. The frontal lobe that is also connected to the visual nerve, and this again can be done in the same way in which any single cluster of memories can be retrieved, which is just kind of using the electromagnetic waves spread around the cluster that has been identified in such a way that even if it's not stimulated at the same time, you will stimulate the whole cluster so fast that the whole cluster is stimulated without need of stimulating one part after the other, because it happens too fast. It's 5G at least is 26 million gigahertz per second, in 26 million waves per second. Yeah. And also 5G usually works better if you have several 5G antennas working. It means that 5G doesn't even need to have a GPS, because 5G can locate precisely in a space your mobile phone. you don't need GPS, because that's the point of 5G. Yeah, is the towers in 5G have to work closer, but at the same time you will be taking the signal not of one tower, but maybe 5, 6, 10, and the more you have, the better. Yeah. As you move between the towers, in the part in which the signal connects, you will have a break in which your mobile phone signal will pass to another tower. But since there is another tower doing the backup, then the previous tower that was sending the signal can be disconnected to be connected in another one, then to help the connection to the other one, and in a way in which, let's say, you are, I don't know, let's say you have a concert in which the artist just drops in the sea of people, and the people just is moving this person. Well, the person doesn't fall in the sea of people, is because there is a lot of people holding it, and do what rock stars do, just swim in a concert full of people. So it's more or less a way to say that you will always have some kind of support that is underneath this technology to work and be connected, not just to your phone, but also to your brain. Then, just a reminder, by now, I think there are over 1,200 Starlink satellites. That's a lot. Yeah. Now, we have talked about the image, the voices that could be induced, the word salad. And yeah, you can have perceptions of smell, it works in the same way. The sensation of feeling works in the same way. But what is not a symptom of schizophrenia that happens to me very often is pain. Is something like this. Let's say I'm reading something. Right now I'm doing this book. I'm reading something, and then I start to have headaches. And then I close it, and I start to read another book, and then I don't have any headache. And then I switch, and then I start to have headaches. So this is the Havana syndrome, but it's way more precise than in the past. Why I say so? Because, well, before going that, okay, I have to explain something, some background. But Havana syndrome is composed by headaches, dizziness, etc., blah, blah, blah. The dizziness thing is the only symptom that I don't have that often. Is mainly pain, yeah? Kind of headaches, kind of pressure, and this can happen in any part of your body. When I arrived to Australia in 2011, I applied for a refugee visa, I think, if I'm not wrong, in 2012. And I remember that when I was talking with the lawyer, she asked me, well, why would you need the visa? And I was explaining, well, in my situation, the Colombian government works with the army and other groups, and they simply disappear people. They disappear people, and then they say that they are guerrilla fighters. And then, well, at least in my town, it will happen in many places more than others, but in my town was one of those places in which they chop people in pieces. Yeah. Sometimes we don't know the reason, but they will just cut their arms and chop it, put it in a bag, etc. And it happened to several people when I was living there. It became a practice even more I don't know, more sophisticated, because then they will burn the bodies, and because it's not body, then it's not crime. But apparently 50,000 people at least was disappearing that way. So there is a lot of people that simply cannot be justified as people who die or as crimes because their body has not been found. But so far, a lot of persons from the military body, from the criminal bands, guerrilla fighters, etc., civil population, through the peace talks in Colombia, have verified that at least so far, as the investigations have gone so far, around 6,000 or over 6,000 people has been deemed legally disappear under the practice of false positives. So when I was explaining that to the lawyer, not that length, but I was telling her like, hey, yeah, what happened is like they really chop people there. Something happened to me. I start to cry, but I burst in tears, like burst in tears. And when I left the meeting, I was like, wow, I never had been able to cry that much. And I think that happened to me at that time was one of the most clear and back in time kind of induced interference that I have. Yeah. So the process of the visa went through the legal aid, which is state-owned lawyers kind of firm, in which lawyers will help people who doesn't have the resources for paying a lawyer. I think at that time I think at that time if you have more than $3,000 in your bank account, then you should pay something. I think I have just $3,000, so I did not pay much. And for some reason, I think, yeah, well, I remember why. But then I switched companies and my job stopped, and I decided to chill out a little bit because I've been working since I was 14 years. I was already 22. So the process was going on in it, and it was a time where I would just chill, but I don't know how many interferences were there. But I remember at the time these interferences were, after that interference, 2013, maybe not even 2014, I will start to have kind of convulsions. So I will be sleeping, I will be then conscious, awake, and I will feel electrocutions in my head. Again, so this is like a kind of let's say external, how that will be called, like remote electroshock therapy or something like that. It felt like that, like remote electroshock therapy. Because I will wake up, I'll be conscious, but I could not move, but I will be conscious, and I will know that, okay, even sometimes I will think, okay, again, I'm here in this situation, and I will be stuck, yeah, with electrocutions. Why that is an electrocution and not a convulsion? Because you lose consciousness in a convulsion. Your mouth is tied, you bit your tongue, and you start to salivate. It's not what happened to me. Yeah, my ex-girlfriend would wake me up. Hey, you are shaking. I was worried, whatever. And I was like, yeah, I was checking. But then, okay, let's go to sleep. Otherwise, we'll make love. Go to sleep. Then I did not realize at the beginning that will be a kind of interference. But then it was made clear because it was not a normal convulsion. What I was experiencing also will be was I will wake up then feel conscious. So I don't know if I have any kind of that interference in Colombia. Possible, not possible. Something that I cannot confirm. Did that ever have any problem of sleep? One day I woke up somnambulous, one day, I remember. But probably I was too sleepy. I remember that. I have one of these bunk beds. When I was a child, went out my bunk bed and pee. I did pee in a corner of the room, so probably I was too sleepy and I thought I was in the bathroom and I pee. But I didn't pee even in my pants. I was peeing there, maybe I was too confused. But besides that, I remember one time I was super tired and I started to sleep, and one of my friends will wake me up and he will check me and I wouldn't wake up, and then he checked me, and then I woke up. But that seems to be a normal thing. Other than that, yeah, not much. I mean, sometimes nightmares, things like, but nothing really extreme, like having this kind of electroshocks. But definitely these kind of electroshocks were not convulsions, because convulsions have a different kind of, let's say, pathology, yeah? And the convulsions also happen for a long period of time. It's not simply that you wake up and that's it. During the same time, the same period, oh, well, that will happen a few nights. I wouldn't really take care about which nights, etc., because they will happen relatively quick. But sometimes when I'm sleeping with my girlfriend, or sometimes when I was alone. But also at that time, I start to experience electroshocks in my spine. And I know that these were electroshocks. It was a day, I remember I bought my first iPhone, and my iPhone was stolen. And technically that same day, I start to have electroshock in my spine. So I will be working. I remember that my boss, the foreman, will tell me, like, okay, just you need to make a hole this big, whatever. We make the hole, and when it was like 2 meters long, he will be like, you are digging your thumb. He was joking. And but for some reason, then the cement, the concrete that they need to use to fill that hole was kind of rushed, so we have to work quicker, and he was pushing me, and at the same time I start to feel electroshocks, and it will be very weird because I will stretch, I will try to touch if it was any muscle or any nerve, etc., but then I will not find any, let's say, kind of injury. But then it comes the duality. A year before, I was carrying a rock and my disc kind of prolapsed, but the prolapse is not that significant. I can run, I can jump nowadays, even with overweight. I can do everything and I feel no pain at all. And the only times in which I feel some kind of pain, it will be because I'm not doing any kind of exercise. But as long as my muscles are strong, I have no pain at all. So then, even when the pain could be for a long time, because I don't do exercise, as long as my back is strong, I don't have pain. But that time, that day, well, it's my boss who was pushing me and rushing me to work faster. It will feel like an electrocution. Why? Because you could feel the vibration, you could feel the hertz per second. Yeah, and I work as an electrician. I work as a technician in McDonald's. I know what is to feel that you had been electrocuted by 120 volts to 140. I know how it feels. You can feel the vibration. You can feel certain things specifically from the current. Also, you do experiments in which you take a high intensity with low voltage, you are able to manage even with precision muscles. So you will notice when this is activated or not. Then you will have a frequency. Yeah, and the frequency is detectable whilst I was having this kind of remote electroshocks, and whilst I was having this kind of pain in my spine. But the pain in my spine was so far the most painful thing I have ever experienced in my life. It's astronomically painful. It's unbelievable. I mean, it's the nervous system can only transmit certain amount of pain. And if all your nervous system in that specific area is overwhelmed, there is no way your system will possibly generate more pain. And that's what I felt. Yeah, that's what I felt. And it not was once, but twice. And it will be always when I was working with the, I think I was having a show. Yeah, so, but I couldn't find what was the position, the muscle, anything, and my flexibility has been usually great since I was young. And then I realized why it was precisely one of those interventions. And I do believe the fact that they stole my backpack with my phone and everything else, it must have been probably part of the same operation. When I went to Apple, they couldn't find my phone. They tried to track it, but they were like, your phone might be off or whatever, blah, 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 and it never went back on. So, strange. And usually you are able to phone or track your phone even from that at that time when I got the iPhone 5. Yeah, as long as the phone is on, you sign up with your account, which is what I did, then you will be able to follow where your phone is. But okay, it's not what happened. I couldn't find my phone and I got some electrocutions, etc. So that's not schizophrenia, okay? That's different. The pain that I feel when reading books or doing my masters is not schizophrenia. So if this is done by a country in specific, and I'm studying national security policy, then we have a country doing interference directly to one potential national security policy worker, advisor, officer, whatever you want to call it. I have never worked for any government except the day in Colombia I put the Christmas lights when I was 14 years old in the town, but it was not even with the government. I was working in the street as an electrician, but otherwise never had worked overtly or covertly with any intelligence agency or anything like that. So then my medication, I have to take it. Going back to that, since I got the diagnosis of schizophrenia, I have to take it because this technology can put you to sleep whenever it wants and can wake you up whenever it wants. There was one day in which I was wake up at midnight and I couldn't sleep again. It was the 26th of January this year. That's the Australian day. The day I was wake up and I couldn't sleep during the whole night. When I had my first episode, I was in the middle of the Flinders Street. This street is one of those streets which have, let's say, 3-4 corners or roads, 3 roads actually. So one that is parallel to the train station and one that is opposed that goes into the city. And this is close to one of the busiest corners in Australia. Technically, this is a place that is 24 hours, might be one of the busiest places in Australia, close to what will be King's Cross in New South Wales. So I was during the day having all these symptoms, like hearing voices, mostly the derogative stuff, and I was so overwhelmed that I thought to myself, if I were other human who doesn't know neuroscience, psychology, psychoanalysis, let's say social sciences, and would not have, let's say, the Socratic method or let's say a kind of objective reasoning, critical thinking, I'm sure this sensation is so overwhelming that someone could succumb into doing indiscriminate acts against society. So I was feeling that I was being pushed to hate society. Yeah? In my mind, I was thinking that what I was hearing was actually the kind of, let's say, collective consciousness of the society. But no, this happened to be a technology that must be managed by, let's say, secret agencies or military technology or something like that. So what I was analyzing was the collective unconscious, not the collective conscious. And the collective conscious exists, especially because, if I'm not wrong, having seen a few videos of Dr. Dr. James, what is his name? Right now, this blocking is done by the technology, yeah? Because I know that the technology also can block your thoughts. James Giordano. James Giordano is a neuroscientist who has been working with the US government. He has wrote a lot of books about neurosecurity, because it happens to be that apparently your mind is a danger if, let's say, someone develops the technology and targets you, and then you end up like a target individual, or someone who is saying that it's being gang stalked, or maybe someone who has a fake illness, or maybe someone who has Havana syndrome. This is all done by the same kind of technology, just having distinct kind of symptoms. So according with him, well, I lost my thread of thought, but I was thinking, okay, so that whatever was going on to me was directing me to have hate towards society, mostly maybe to awake feelings of anger, frustration, in which other human, I do believe, is capable to apply indiscriminate violence against society, because that's what it feels that they lead you to. And I stay under that months, hearing derogative things every single day. And the weird thing is, like, you have someone next to you, you hear their voice, even when you are looking to them, their lips move, you recognize their voice, and you look away to another person or another, whatever you are looking, you just look away, and you keep hearing the same voice, but now with derogative terms. So it means that this technology is able to distinguish when you see things and when you don't see things. Why is that? Because if you want to attack a specific cluster in your brain, in anyone's brain, you need to know the exact position in which this thing works. Yeah. So then, to know the exact position, you need to know the biometrics of the person. And to know the biometrics of the person, you have that map or that information to then know exactly where to target. And then, if you have the electromagnetic, let's say, technology that will be used with AI to cut the waves in which using beamforming can be generated in a specific fine located and defined place in your brain to stimulate and not damage the brain whilst not losing energy when trespassing your brain, because that's the point of beamforming energy. Then you will need to use again AI to have the map already where you want to use that technology and in which places you're going to use them. And this happens even when you are in movement. Now, this precision is incredible. So you need AI to modulate the waves, AI to modulate the map, okay, and AI to modulate the information that will be beamed using the map through electromagnetic waves. So we have at least 3 applications of AI in this technology. I cannot go into the specifics because I don't know them. What I'm saying is technically possible. It's not necessarily the technology itself, but it's technically possible. Maybe we'll need some tweaks there, some tweaks in other places. Maybe this technology will need, let's say, something like a brain scan, full scan body, which these scans were done to me, yeah? And maybe in an MRI also. I participated in a study in Swinburne University just to help scientists to cure schizophrenia. And what happens is if this data is used wrongly, then you will have a lot of physicians, a lot of doctors, a lot of PhD students trying to solve schizophrenia on people who has been in artificially induced schizophrenia. That's a shame. That's a shame for science. So there are scientists who don't allow another colleagues like, let's say, myself, who like social sciences, to keep develop their science. So everyone, as a scientist, want to push the boundaries of science. And there are scientists who don't allow other scientists to go beyond those boundaries. And it goes against any, let's say, values that you will have as a scientist. And that's important. That's important. You will have professionals that will do it knowingly, unknowingly. Let's say I was a threat for some reason. And whatever I was studying was not a threat for any society, but actually to fix things in the society. But at the same time, what will be that threat? I spoke in another videos. They might be saying that I'm communist, and I would love to go to Yale. Let's say if someone say you have been a spy, and okay, let's go to the court. And it will be really fun. It will be really fun. I will love that. I mean, that will be one of the I mean, that will be super joyful because I could make a lot of jokes, believe me, and everyone will enjoy those trials. But I'm not a criminal. Then they cannot take me to court for that reason. But let's say I'm a spy. It will be even better because I will have way more jokes. Way more jokes. And let's assume I'm a terrorist. I do believe that will be a serious claim because most likely all the information must have been fabricated. Then it will be a piece of cake. It will be simple, you know, wouldn't take more than that 1 day, I mean. Then, well, absolute, I don't know, terrorism is like, I mean, it's like, how come? Yeah, if they couldn't even make me a terrorist applying one of the most sophisticated technologies. So they kind of claim that I was a terrorist before. Doesn't make sense. Now, let's assume, I don't know, what else could be the case? Let's assume there are secret laws in Australia in which immigrants or refugees can be used as cattle to contribute extremist political agendas by law. Then Australia will be infringing technically everything that is related with human rights internationally and all the commitments that have been done internationally related with it. That's why I find one of the solutions to my case to find a Bill of Rights for Australia. Because a Bill of Rights in Australia will make common sense for that people, at least if they are Australian, using that technology upon Australians to say, hey, now we are going against our own constitution and I joined to the forces so I can keep the constitution because I agree with the Australian bodies. So this will generate a kind of common sense, but also popular knowledge, or this will generate as well a notion of what will be kind of just necessary, or let's say an idea of what is the obvious and moral thing to do. Yeah, because it's simply in the Constitution. Okay. Yeah. I will try to limit myself to 1 hour because otherwise I cannot have the script translated in English. Yeah, so expect more records and recordings and videos. And this was Daniel Roa, FM 26 million gigahertz.